G'day team, hope this finds you well. This conversation is a recent recording I had with Mark LeBusque, or a conversation I had with Mark LeBusque from the Simply Practically Human podcast. We're doing a series of 6 talks on his show because we can, and because I'm super lazy and Melissa's in the hammock, we've decided to just share those on this platform as well, on the U Project, to do a co-share. So this is that conversation with Mark. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you're well. Love your guts. See you soon.
Joined again by the wonderful Craig Harper.
Hello, champion. Good to see the Beanie Boys back in town doing what we do, black and black.
Before we get into this, mate, happy 500th.
Thank you. Yeah, we clocked up a few, well, it depends on when people listen to this, but recently we clocked up 500 eps on my show, which is great. And it's been a steep learning curve and skill development and, you know, an eye-opener and a relationship builder and a business builder and a sleepless nights provider and it's interesting.
Well done, mate. And also to Melissa and Tiff, it was a great episode. I listened to it this morning, actually, and one of the things that struck me was that you are very popular in the Russian Federation.
Well, what Mark is talking about, everyone, is the fact that I think we have listeners in over 100 countries. And by that, I mean, you know, probably in some countries we have one, but the list goes pretty deep. And the other day, obviously, Australia's number 1 all the time, America's 2, Britain and or New Zealand alternate between 3 and 4. But number 10 was, the Russian Federation. And that made me both curious and a little bit scared, I've got to say. So, that was interesting. So I sometimes don't know how that data works, how those stats work, but there we were. Well, there they were, number 10.
Well, mate, I saw one on mine the other day through the wonderful people at Wooshka said that I was being listened to by someone in Georgia, as in not in Georgia in the US, but in Georgia. So when you said that the other day, or when you were talking about it, I had an immediate vision in my head of Putin riding on his horse like he does with his shirt off with his little AirPods in.
Yeah.
Taking some tips from the great man. So well done.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's who it is. So, you know, let's out him.
Thank you too for your little G-up this week. You sent me that picture of how we charted in that first episode, with also your note that said, I think something like, well done, mate, you're at number 8, not shit after all. That's good feedback.
Yeah, well, you were. I mean, it was your episode. You hosted it. You recorded it. We just basically used your audio file and I whacked my name on it because I'm lazy. And the podcast that you interviewed and hosted and recorded and produced was sitting at number 8 in the world for education. So
I love
that's what I said to you. But, you know, I think this just, and forget me and you, but isn't it just good when somebody who's got a bit more influence or a bit more momentum than someone else can go, hey, you're good. Let me give you a hand. And I don't want anything back. And, you know, there's no hooks, catches, agendas. It's just that you're good and I recognize it. And, you know, I think we need more of that. Not everything has to have there is an upside for me in doing this because I get to meet you and know you and learn from you. But also, you know, we get to co-share the podcast. But, you know, when I met you the first time, you know, I was very complimentary the first time and I never knew there'd be a second time, you know. So I'm very supportive of what you do because not everyone in this space is a talent, not everyone, as with every space. And not everybody in this space is probably worth listening to, but you definitely are. And for me, it's good to see that you're starting to create more momentum and people are recognising what you're doing and who you are. So win-win.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I think that sort of law of abundance, your helpfulness. The other thing I want to shout out is to Andy Marr, who I very rarely talk about, my podcast editor, who's based in Melbourne as well, in lockdown central at the moment, for the brilliant work that he does in producing these. So, Andy, thank you very much, mate, for putting up with me and giving me so many great tips. Hey, mate, I just wanted to quickly share with you as well and the listeners, because you've helped me out here and you're like this, you know, you'll start to get some more listeners. And I actually received an email this week from, her name's Vicky Evans, but when I went to school with her name was Vicky Bull. And she flicked me this email after going for a walk with a dog. listening to the You Project this week, she basically said, strange, but I couldn't resist reaching out to say hi. And she sort of went on to say, I was listening to the You Project the other day. Craig mentioned he was going to be on with a guy called Mark LeBusque, and she sort of thought, there's not many Mark LeBusques in the world. I wonder if it's him. We were talking. She was still trying to work it out. But when the jumbo fatty bit came up, she said she laughed out loud and said, oh, fatty, that's definitely the guy. The thing I really love that she said is she'd been listening to you for years, and it's like, I really feel like I know this guy. And with what you said before, it's two guys having conversations. And I think what people get out of these a lot is it's like they can relate. And it's just, I feel like I know this person. She also sort of said it's nice to see someone from Mildura putting themselves out there, which was lovely. So there you go.
Well, it is interesting. You know, we do, like when you connect with someone a lot, even if that connection is one way. So I've been listening to Joe Rogan for 8 years. I reckon I've heard at least 1,000 hours of Joe Rogan, probably 3,000 hours. And, you know, it's like I know so much about him. I don't know, I've never met him, but I know so much about him. And a lot of people are like that with me. And it's funny when somebody, not on a daily basis, but on a not too infrequent basis, you know, somebody that I meet for the first time wants to hug me, like,
yep.
And dudes as well. And then they tell me a story about how they've changed their life because of a few light bulbs and lessons that they've gleaned through the show. And for me, that's genuinely, that makes me happier than someone, you know, buying a ticket to an event or buying a book, or it's just that, you know. So it's good that we can connect with people, and shout out to Vicky.
Yeah, absolutely. Vicky, thank you very much for reaching out. And she said, I'm surprised that you responded to me. Well, you shouldn't be, because that's the human thing to do. Hey, today I have this thing called, it's like the passion meter for me. I give a fuck meter about things. And one of the things that's really been set off when I've been talking to you 3 or 4 times now is how passionate you are around self-awareness. You know, last week you talked about self-awareness, situational awareness, emotional intelligence, but self-awareness seems to be this sort of thread that goes through a heap of things. And I wanted to open up, as someone famously says, a bit of a big door on this one today and focus around self-awareness. So I want to kick us off today, Harps, with, because I know this is something that this is part of your PhD, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So something that you're into, and what I love about it is there's the lived experience piece here from you, as well as the academia that's now coming into it. Let's start off with this one. What's your definition of self-awareness?
I'll answer that, but let me go around a bit, because it's not a single thing for me, because self-awareness is bigger than a single construct. So there's psychological, physiological, sociological, emotional awareness. So self-awareness is really me having, for me anyway, my definition is having an awareness of how I am and what is going on those levels, psychologically, emotionally, physically, what's going on with me and in me, and being aware of it without judging it or without labeling it or without injecting emotion into it. Then another level of self-awareness is awareness of self around others. So we can call this social awareness. And then the version of self-awareness that I'm exploring in my study is external self-awareness, which is my ability to understand how other people see and experience me and why that matters. You know, it'd be nice to just wheel out one sentence, but it's like saying, what's health? Well, it's not a sentence, it's a bunch of stuff. But self-awareness is a good question, is maybe what happens if we don't have self-awareness? Well, we're probably not going to be great to be around, because we're probably going to offend a few people, and we're probably going to create more disconnection than connection. And we probably won't be very empathetic or kind, either intentionally or not. So self-awareness matters. And also it's impossible, or it's not impossible, it's hard to grow and evolve and improve if we lack self-awareness, you know, because then I can't identify what I need to get better at. So self-awareness is knowing in real time I think I'm pissing this person off, or I think I'm talking too much, or I think I'm looking at my phone too much, or it might be something as simple as I eat too much and I tell myself bullshit stories about it. That's self-awareness. And self-awareness, some people confuse self-awareness with self-loathing. And I know that you sometimes think I step into self-loathing, and I'm sure you're going to bring that up today. I feel that coming on. And that's understandable, but like sometimes when I talk about external self-awareness, some people's response is, oh, I don't care what people think. Fuck them. I'm just going to be me. And if they don't like me, well, fuck. I'm like, well, if you live on an island, that's a great strategy. But if you actually have to have interaction and connection and communication and relationships with human beings, you should really care how you are processed and perceived by others.
Yep.
Not because you're insecure and not because you've got a big ego, but because it matters that you understand how people experience you so that you can create healthy communication and connection.
Thanks, mate. Listen, you are so perceptive because I'm going to go there, but not just yet. However, for me at this point in time, I want to refer back to an amazing question that Melissa asked you in episode 500, which was, what have you learnt about you through the process? And you gave some really, really great answers to that. But there was this moment there, which I don't know that I've observed by listening to you. So I heard by listening to your podcast or spoken to you, where you said, I like me. And that was really, really powerful at the time, because it was one of the first times I'm like, I know this guy's really open in that, but it's almost like you stumbled over those words a little bit. And you then said, I know I am, but I feel I'm not. And that to me went straight into self-awareness. Can you talk a little bit about that ability to like ourselves, to like self? How challenging is that when there's I know I'm good at what I do, but I feel I'm not? What's going on there?
Yeah. So I think we often feel unworthy when we know we're not unworthy. So there's the difference between the emotion that's happening and the knowing, the intellect, the mind, and the emotion. So I can feel like a fraud, but I can look back. Okay, so here's a very common, or this is a common experience for me and a really easy to understand way to explain and highlight what you're talking about. So I would say almost every time I get on stage, I'm not panic-stricken, I'm not anxious, but part of me feels like you're not good enough to do this. You've gotten away with it a lot. You can, you're a bit of a good storyteller and you can fake it, but really today's the day you're going to fuck up or you'll be discovered, or, the truth will be revealed, and all of those kind of, those self-sabotaging feelings. And it's not overwhelming, but it's there. But at the same time as having those feelings of not being enough, I have the awareness and the knowledge that, well, I've done this 1,000 times or more, and I'm somewhere between okay at it and pretty good at it. So that's what I know. But despite what I know, it doesn't take away that capacity that I have to simultaneously feel unworthy. And so I think I know personally anyway, for me, those things can coexist, which seems like they shouldn't, because, if it was only about what we've done, you'd say, well, I produced a podcast and it got to number 8 in the world in education. I'm pretty fucking good. But I bet there's nothing in you that's telling yourself right now, I'm pretty fucking good.
No.
Well, number 8 would suggest that you are. But nonetheless, look, there's no absolute on this. But what I think is for me, so I'm just going to say for me, and then people don't think I'm talking broadly. But for me, being a bit insecure and being a bit, in terms of my natural ability and IQ and all of these things, and genetics, somewhat average or mediocre, I ironically think that is a bit of a gift, because it keeps me working hard and focused. It keeps me grounded that I'm not better than I am. And I don't say that I'm, I know I hang a bit of shit on myself. I don't do that because I'm looking for approval or attention. I genuinely feel that sometimes. I know that I'm not stupid, but I also don't think I'm a genius. But I'm quick to say I work very hard. And, with my podcast, I did 300 podcasts before we got any traction.
Yeah.
I did 400 before we were making okay money through sponsors. And at 500 now we're doing pretty well. And I'm very grateful. But it's not like it fucking fell on my head or the podcast fairy arrived at my front door with a bag of gold. Right? I worked like a motherfucker, and so did Melissa, and so did Tiff. I built a $30,000 studio at home. I spent $20,000 on equipment. And I don't say any of this to sound good, but what I'm saying is I invested physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, and then I worked like a fucker for years, and then it came. So this is not like I'm the unicorn and everything I touch just works. And that was the same with my businesses, my gyms. That was the same with my study first time around as a 36-year-old first-time university student. For me, it's just been work. But the beauty of work is that it makes you better than you were.
Yeah, I like that. There is certainly something valuable in hearing that voice that says, well, you're not as good as you think you are, and because it gets you talk about growth a lot too and growing into it. One thing I'm curious about though, Harps, is do you stop at times and just sit with it and go, I'm just going to, it's not basking in the glory of it all, but just sitting there and acknowledging that, hey, you know what? You said it before, like you're impacting on people's lives. Do you stop in a moment and go, I'm going to sit in and feel this and feel proud of what I've been able to do here?
Truthfully, not enough.
Yep.
Not enough.
That's my sense with you too. And I'd like to hear that more from you, because you do amazing things. And that's not to blow smoke up your ass. It's just the way the world is. But I hear you say a lot, I'm not good at many things, or I'm good at something, but I don't hear you sort of give yourself the rap that I think you should. But that's just my view of the world.
Look, also, I will just say this. I feel also, and I don't, this is going to sound negative, right? I am scared in Australia to even sound like I think I'm good, because I think Australians hate people who think they're good. And I don't think overwhelmingly of myself in the first place. However, I'm very careful to not sound conceited or arrogant or egotistical. And also, and this is going to sound a bit woe is me, it's not, I have no self-pity around this at all. But my experience is all of the times, from when I was 18, I had started my own first business as a screen printer and a graphic designer. And I started my own little business called Classic Screen Printing, and I worked for me, and I went okay. And then I opened my first gyms at 26, and I did okay. I had a lot of success relative to where I had come from. Like I grew up in the country, didn't go to university, stumbled through school. I didn't have rich parents. I didn't come from an opulent background. I didn't have access to resources. We weren't poor, but it wasn't spectacular. But my long-winded message is that all of the times that I did really well, it seemed mostly like it pissed people off.
Right.
The amount of people who were genuinely, Mark, and I don't mean superficially, I mean really genuinely happy that I was killing it, very few. I don't say this much, but this is true. By the time I was 30, I had 3 gyms. I had another business, believe it or not, a beauty salon with a bunch of ladies working in there. So I had 4 businesses. I had the best part of 100 staff. I was making lots of money compared to what I ever thought I would make. Business was good. Life was good. Maybe I was 31 or 2. But I can tell you the people that were genuinely happy for me were very few and far between. And so I learned very quickly, don't speak about your success.
Yep.
Now, I wish this, I'm not saying this as advice for others, but I learned this for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I could tell you story after story where I just learned very quickly, and maybe it's different in 2021, but I learned very quickly not to stick my head up, to pull my head in. And, look, when I started my first gym, I signed a 5-year lease, which to me was terrifying. I spent all the money that I had in the world minus $200. I can tell you how much it was. It was $32,800 on setting up my first PT studio, which in 1990 for me was $1 million. I was still working 3 nights a week in pubs, getting punched in the face. I was getting to the gym every morning at 4:30 to clean the gym, to clean the toilets, to vacuum, to clean the mirrors. I was everything. I did the admin. I was the manager. I was the PR guy, the marketing guy. I was the tax guy. I was the everything. And then I would train people all day, go home, have a shower, splash my face, eat some food, and go to the pub and start working at 10.
Yep.
Now, I don't want any pity or anything, but that was my background. And that wasn't for 5 minutes. That was for years. Mm. And then one day when you're doing okay, it pisses people off because they think you're lucky or you've fallen on your feet.
Thanks for sharing that. Like that whole story, I'm sure many, many people can relate to it. I think that the vulnerability in that is brilliant. Just a couple of things that came to mind for me then is obviously first thing came to mind for me, the old Aussie tall poppy syndrome came straight into my mind. It's like, yeah, we'll cut them down when they have a bit of success. Maybe there's a level of jealousy that comes into that. The other one that comes in for people sometimes is like, they don't see all that stuff you just talked about. It's like, I'm cleaning my gym, I'm doing this, I'm then going and getting punched in the face, I'm chucking a bit of food into my guts in between that, and I'm doing that day in, day out for years. People get a bit like, oh, he's a bit of an overnight success. And the story I just heard then, this is like let's call it, if we said 2021 and back to there, you're a 31-year overnight success. Mm. And it's very, very sad how people can't allow themselves and be aware enough to go, I'm actually really proud of what he's done and I'm going to let him know that. And then that might allow you and others to talk about it. I talked last week about being lucky. That's my stop story. I also have a go story, which is I tell people what I'm great at or what I'm awesome at, and I share that in my program, and I do ask them if I can drop the F-bomb when I say it. And I just go, I'm fucking awesome at creating a space where humans feel safe enough to be themselves and be human. And I look at the looks on people's faces, and some of them are looking at me like, you're a dickhead. Some of them are looking at me like, yeah, we get that with you. And I do care about it, but in some respects, I'm just like, that's what I think. And it's not up for me to have them work out whether they believe it or not. That's up to them. But does it feel shit when I say it? No, it actually feels really good now to go, I reckon I'm great at this. In fact, I reckon I'm awesome at it. And I think we need more of that. However, I also get that it's as scary as shit. Two things I've heard you say when you're talking about self-awareness is, one is how I am to me, and the other one is how I am to or for others. And I've written down here as you're talking what I called the Craig or the Harps experience. And the question I want to ask you, mate, is how does Harps experience Harps? So if we start at that work of self, how do you experience yourself if you had to describe that? What would that be?
I'm very I'm thoughtful. And by that, I mean, I think critically, not critically as in negative, critically as in consciously about things. I'm curious. I'm creative. I genuinely love helping people, which is a naff cliche thing to say, so I hate saying it, but I do. And I've discovered, and this is a spiritual principle for me that, by the way, I didn't invent this. This is forever and this is eternal wisdom. But within reason, of course, you need to manage yourself and your energy. You can't be all things to all people and you can't kill yourself to help others. However, putting that aside, I realise within reason, the more generous I am, the more I get.
Yep.
I realise the more selfish I am, the worse my life is. And I don't just say this because these are cliche, timely things to say in the context of this warm, fucking fuzzy moment, right? I genuinely know there have been times when I was so me-focused and, I was still turning on the Craig show and, being funny and interesting and all of that. But really at my core, it was pretty much about me. So I was selfish, but in the middle of my selfishness and me trying to look after me the most and only me, I was the most miserable I've ever been. From the outside looking in, ticking lots of boxes, and you might say, depending on your criteria, successful, but from the inside out, an emotional, spiritual, and psychological train wreck. And so this speaks to this concept that I talk about, which is we live in two worlds, or the duality of being us, which is physical world, non-physical world, seen, unseen, three-dimensional, and so there's the world we live in, which is situations, circumstance, environment, job, bank balance, all that stuff. That's the world we live in. Then there's the world that lives in us. And so my external world was, I guess, a 9 out of 10, but my internal world was a 2. And that was because I believe my focus and attention and energy and even values for a time were not in the right place. And also because, and I think this is an epidemic, I was living largely unconsciously on autopilot. And I bought into the paradigm that I was raised in, which was essentially success is about stuff, what you have, what you earn, what you own, what you drive, what your bank balance is, what people think you, where you live, all of this visible seen, all of these KPIs, all of these metrics that we think matter the most. And not that they are not important and not that they are of themselves bad, of course, but when they are the only thing that has my attention, then I'm in a shit place. And that's where I was for a long time. And I'll shut up in a sec, but I've told this story a bit, but I didn't have a breakdown, but I had a moment, we'll call it a moment, when I was in my early 30s, when I went, I've got all this stuff, but I'm not happy. What's that about? And I literally went away by myself for 10 days to Queensland. I walked away from all my businesses, left, organised things, but left quite promptly within 24 hours of making the decision. Didn't talk to another human, didn't have a phone call, didn't watch television, didn't listen to radio. There were no podcasts then. I literally had no interaction with anyone other than perhaps buying a coffee. And I spent 10 days by myself thinking about what I was about, what my life was about, and what I wanted the rest of my life to be about. Because despite the fact that I was successful in inverted commas, my experience, my personal experience, was not that of success.
Well, so many things going through my mind now. Is that the first step into the real work of what you call going inside out, the work of self-awareness? Was that the moment for you where it's like, this is where it starts? And from that time on, you whether it's your lived experience or the work that you're doing now, it seems it's almost it's a real passion for you now to become more self-aware. And I think also what I get the sense of is to help others to step into that space as well, because one of the things I love to see is humans don't know what they don't know about themselves unless they start to explore and experiment. You call it there's a bit of the going inside out piece here. There's a lot of talk about humans resisting change, and I'm not so sure that we resist change. Well, we resist change, but there's something else going on. There's what I call loss avoidance, and it's, again, not my thing, but it's something that I've heard, and a great quote that I've heard, and I think it might be from either Andrew O'Keefe, who's written a great book called Hardwired Humans, not the guy on Channel 7, by the way, or Nigel Nicholson, and he says, we fear loss much more than we value gain. And if you think about it from a self-awareness perspective, and I love what you talked about before about the external, all of the things, the cars, the houses, the businesses, and these things. What did you have to give up to step into this work of self?
In answer to your initial question, was this the time when I was in my early 30s, took 10 days out of my life where I started to go deep? No, that wasn't the time, but that was a significant moment in time where I did hit the reset button. I actually started going deep, believe it or not, and will open the door, fuck it, who cares, when I was a child. I was always wondering about humans, and I was always wondering if there was more than what I could see. I was always thinking, and that could be anything from, is there another dimension? Is there a God? Is that real? I grew up in a very religious environment where I was taught and told and trained all of these things that some sounded like bullshit, some were intriguing, some I thought, is that true? How can they know what happens when we die? Because nobody that tells me this has actually died. So is that, do you know what I mean? I was very curious. But also I'm a human with an ego and self-esteem and insecurity and all of those things. And so it's very easy to, to lose that perspective when shit starts going well. So when I was 14, I was this morbidly obese kid. Then I got in shape. Then I started training more. Then I wake up one day, I'm 18, I'm 19, I'm working in gyms, I'm jacked, I've got muscles and veins and shit, and I'm driving what I think's the best car in the world. It was a piece of shit, but for me it was amazing, and now you're not socially invisible. Girls notice you and you're making money and you're fucking king of the heap, you're not really, and so it was very easy for me to lose my, I guess, awareness and focus around the things that maybe I should have held in high regard or high position in my consciousness. But at the same time, I was deep, mate. I was, there's stuff about me that you don't know, but I'll tell you a few things today. So one is when I was about 19, I joined a church, another church. I was raised in Catholicism and fundamental, full-on, rafted, swinging, tambourine banging, Bible reading, praying, prophesying church. And I was immersed in that for about 3 or 4 years, where all I wanted to do is understand this thing called God or whatever there was beyond what I could see. And, that fascinated me, the possibility that there's more than this. And is there a loving creator or is it bullshit? Is there such a thing as healing? And I just had a lot of questions, and I met people that really at that time resonated with me, and I was definitely hungry and seeking and searching. So that was a journey into all things spiritual and all things beyond the norm for me, where I was very much about trying to make myself an awesome, not awesome in a sense that we think of it now, but a good person, like a value-driven person. I didn't sleep with anyone for 5 years.
Yep.
I was completely celibate. I've never drunk in my life. I've never used drugs in my life. I was a straighty 180 with a personality that I always had to harness.
Yeah.
I always had ability to communicate, but sometimes that ability to talk can get you in trouble. And in fact, my pastor, who was this really old guy that I loved, he said to me one day, I was about 19 or 20, he called everyone dear one. And he said to me, dear one, you need to decide what you're going to do with that tongue of yours, because you can lift people up or pull people down.
Yeah.
And in church, we call it edification, which is lifting people up spiritually and emotionally. And he said, you need to use that to edify. And it was so true. And he was because I was a bit damaged, if somebody would have a bit of a go at me, I would annihilate them verbally because I could. And that's not a good trait.
No. Geez, mate, you have opened the door. Thank you for doing that too. It's incredible because, I'm just sitting here listening going, bloody hell. But a couple of things, again, I love picking stuff up. Like the curiosity's always been there since a young boy. It's like I'm trying to understand the world. I'm trying to understand humans. You've carried that all the way through. Like you can say 49 years later, I've got that same thing there with me. What I'd love to hear is you took on some advice from someone who said you can either lift people up or you can annihilate people. You've got a choice to make now. That's really, really powerful, because at that point in time, it's like, well, what am I going to do? And when I talked before about what did you have to give up, whether it's about lifting people up versus annihilating people, or whether it's about the external Craig who had all of these wonderful things, what have you had to lose in order for you and others to gain as you've kept going through life?
I don't think I lost anything good, to be honest. I think I lost stuff that I needed to lose. I guess it really depends from which perspective you look at things, but obviously I never got married. I wasn't anti-marriage. I just didn't. I dated plenty of people. I actually got engaged when I was in that church. But nothing that I sit here now and think, I wish I had have done this, or I wish I had have not done that. And look, I mean, I also want to stress that we can overthink the shit out of things too. I think it's really important that while I am a deep thinker, but I also go and list heavy shit with my mate every day. I've got motorbikes. I also watch stupid shit on Netflix. I also love telling a dick joke. I also love just laughing at silly shit, right? So it's not like I'm eating alfalfa and living in a cave in a caftan. But I'm very aware that there's more to life than what we see. And It's the stuff that we don't see that fascinates me. Like, I used to buy fancy cars because I could. And I had about 10 fancy cars in a row. Then one day it was like this switch went. I went, what? Firstly, I would buy the car and hardly drive it because then I would worry about the car getting scratched and I'd spend all this money and then maybe a year later I would sell it and I won't even tell you how much I would lose in a year, but let's just go with fucking way too much, right? Then I'd do it again and again and I didn't do it because I wanted to impress people because I would rarely show them. I just really like, and I still really like nice cars, but I thought I just do dumb shit. And I just stopped that, and I literally drive a Suzuki Swift now, which is worth $1.75 and I fucking love it, right? And like for me, I realized that I just wasted talent and energy and time and focus for me on things that don't matter.
Yeah.
Like so much energy on shit that I can't control or change, or stuff that I can control but really isn't important. Is it important that, my arms are 19 inches? Is it important that I can bench press 1,000 pounds? Is it important that, again, I'm only talking personally, we need to each figure out what really is important to us, really based on who we say we are and want to be and our values, and then hopefully build an operating system and a life around that value system. And because it's all well and good to say, I love helping people and, I'm really into personal growth and I'm spiritual and all of these things that we say. But what I always say to people is what matters is what you do when no one's paying attention.
Yeah, love it.
When no one's giving you a round of applause, when no one's cheering you on, when there's not a fucking trophy or a ribbon or a pat on the back. And for me, that's when I'm the most brutal on me. When I'm by myself and I'm about to give myself a get out of jail card on something and I go, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
You're full of shit.
Mate, thanks for so many things you're sharing today, getting that connection and understanding you a hell of a lot more, which is a great thing, and understanding such a powerful piece. As you were talking then, Harps, I'm thinking about myself and I'm thinking about other people who have all been afflicted with this thing of when we're looking outwards at what's important, and usually what's important, and it's not a bad thing, is we want to try and impress people, whether it's material things or we win something or a ribbon or whatever it might be in some sort of sporting event or a premiership or something like that. But the energy that it takes to continually impress others, I think there's a shitload of energy that we use up there that we could be using in other ways, maybe other more constructive and productive ways. When did this start for us? Like, I'm thinking about school for me, and A's, B's, C's or D's. Impress the teachers, impress the parents, do things to show other people that I'm smart. It's part of my identity. It's part of who I want to be seen as. Did it start that far back? And then I'm just talking in general here. Does it start in the school system and it just magnifies from there that we are trying to outwardly impress? What are your thoughts here?
I think it starts younger. I think it starts earlier. And you think, well, why would we want to impress people? What's the reward? The reward is approval. The reward is love. The reward is recognition. The reward is belonging, acceptance. So that's why when we're 2, we want to show mum and dad how well we can dance or sing. Or when we're 4, we want to show them the drawing that we did. We want to impress them at 4 because we want them to give us love and attention and approval because that's our emotional food. So, for most of us, impressing someone is analogous to getting loved. They're impressed with me. They like me. They respect me. They want me. They need me. They value me or whatever. And I think that doesn't stop. I don't think it stops. I still want people to like me. I'm still insecure. I try very much not to let that desire dictate what comes out of my mouth. Like, if it was only about me, I wouldn't have shared half of what I've shared today, because some of that stuff makes me uncomfortable and I don't think I need to share it. But I think that will help maybe some people who've been in similar spaces, and some stuff I look back, I'm a bit embarrassed. Some stuff I look back, I'm like, that feels like 19 different lifetimes and like I was almost someone else. But that's my life. And the dichotomy is I'm literally in pubs getting punched in the face and going to church.
Yeah.
Like, here's the weirdness. Here's the scale of me. Like, these things don't go together. And I'm in the gym because I'm insecure, I'm trying to create this Adonis body. I'm trying to create this cartoon character-like body with ridiculous dimensions and veins and shit. And at the same time, I'm reading the Bible that says he who exalts himself will be humbled and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Like, I'm learning about ego and I'm learning about humility and the benefits. But on the other hand, I'm in the gym trying to get gigantic arms because I'm an insecure fuckwit. So humans are complicated. But I think the beauty of it is that we are all, always, works in progress.
Yes.
And when you meet the person that tells you they've figured it all out, run the fuck away.
Yep.
Right? Because I interviewed a guy this morning who's one of the world's leading brain scientists, researchers, and neuroscientists called Moran Cerf. And this dude is a legit genius. We had an awesome conversation. But has he got issues? Of course he has. Is he a normal human? Of course he is. Does he fuck up? Of course. Right? We're all the same. He was married to Ashley Judd, the actress. He works on Hollywood movies apart from all the other shit he does, as a science advisor where he writes all the science for these, like that movie Limitless and the TV series Limitless and Bull, the TV show, and all the. He's a genius. He's so clever, so charismatic. But has he got issues? Of course, because he's a bloke, because he's a human. Like, we hold up perfection on this ridiculous pedestal, and we need to kick the legs off that, because it's so what, the healthy goal is progress, is learning, is better, is improvement.
Yeah, mate. Two things there. One was, that's the duality of the human condition, and you've just shared that. The interesting thing with that is people tend to remember the shit things that Mark did, maybe when he was at Teachers College or whatever it was, and I did do some shit things there. Let me tell you, I couldn't say them on here because it'd be absolutely embarrassing, and you wouldn't want to be associated with me. The second part of this, which I picked up early when you were talking, you talked about the approval of others. And then I went, what about the approval of self? So is that part of the complexity of self-awareness, is the approval of self? Is that a part of the construct of getting more self-aware?
That's a really good question. Approval of self. Yeah. Look, the answer is yes, I think. You can comfortably know that you're flawed and you've got issues, but also you're a good person doing your best. And I'm pretty comfortable that I'm a good person doing my best.
Yep.
Do I have bad days? Yes. Do I ever offend anyone? Of course I do. Just listen to my language. Do I piss some people off? Yeah. Do some people not like me? Of course. Apart from everything else, it's a statistical inevitability that if you communicate with enough people across enough mediums, someone's going to, want to put you in an airplane, as one of my respondents did, want to put me in an airplane, fly me over an active volcano and drop me in it. Like, that was his message to me. And I'm like, dear Brian, thanks for your feedback. Have a great day. Chin up. And but you get that, right? And it's like, when someone hates me, I go, I don't blame you. I hate me sometimes too. And if you don't like me, fucking no problems with that. Just don't listen. There's heaps of other people. And if you don't agree with me, also no problem. We don't all have to agree. But don't send me vile vitriol because I don't think like you think, or I don't eat like you eat, or I don't worship like you worship, or I don't vote like you vote, or we have a different opinion on COVID or whatever it is, getting on your hate horse and just spewing out venom to the world, for me, I won't get involved.
Yep.
So when someone sends me something horrible, I won't even respond. I actually wish them well. And that sounds like bullshit, but I do.
No, look, I learned a valuable lesson of that. At a break in one of the programs I was running about 3 years ago, I opened up by mistake. I had a look at my emails, and there was an email from a lady, and I can't remember her name now, but it said, "Your first book is shit. It has been written by a 5-year-old. In fact, most of it wouldn't even be written by a 5-year-old. I've seen you at a conference where you were handing out your books like candy at a kid's birthday party, and you're basically shit at what you do. Some sort of self-help guru." And my immediate response was, fucking, I'm coming back at you like as hard as I can. And then I stopped and went, "Thank you for your feedback. Yep, duly noted and happy days." And then I got a response saying, "Oh, look, I'm having a bit of a bad day today." And I just wrote back and said, "Look, it's okay." And I think it was a really good lesson, because I haven't received a lot of that. No one's now going to drop me in a volcano. But when you get it and you go, "I'm going to come back and attack you back," but then I thought, why would I do that? But many years ago, I would have been straight back into it. And I think there's something in self-awareness there. Hey, let's round it out, because we're rounding out. We've been going for 50 minutes and it feels like about 5. How does it feel for you? How's this session been for you today?
Mate, I'm good. We can keep going.
Righto, mate. So I think we've heard from both you and me today. We've both been in the outside-in trap, the old trap of impressing others and that. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I think we like to be liked, and I think even more so like to be respected. If there's someone listening today who's sort of really caught in that outside-in trap of impressing and approval from others, what would be one simple, maybe not simple because it could be complex, one simple tool that you've used or tip you would give them to maybe step more towards looking at self for approval than looking for others to start with?
The main person you need approval from is yourself. Am I being true? Am I being real? Am I living my purpose? I know these are all cliches, but this is not the worst approach. Am I on the path I want to be on? And also, a lot of us spend a lot of time seeking the approval of people who give zero shits about us anyway.
Yep.
It's like we invest a lot of time, like you almost did with that lady, where you were going to jump back in and fuck you and whatever. And fortunately you didn't, and well done. But, that's just your ego that gets dented. That's your self-esteem. And guess what? I've had that. I've had many versions of that, and we all do. But it's interesting when you take the high road and you go, yep, okay, I hear you. Thanks for your feedback. All of a sudden, now you've literally changed the energy in that exchange. You've been wise. So in terms of people who are constantly looking for approval and not getting it, or feel like they're in that psychological cycle of wanting people's, approval or attention or connection, and that can almost become like an addiction. It's hard to be objective about the thing you're in the middle of, right? So there's a really good book by Gerber called The E-Myth. It's a very old book, but the guts of the book is you can't work on the business when you're in the business. So,
yep.
If you're in the middle of it, yeah, good luck. If you're just grinding at the coal face, that's cool, but it's very hard to step back and develop, have a big picture look, right? So when we're in that trap, that coal face micro of trying to keep everyone happy and trying to impress people, it's very hard to step 19 steps back into the macro of, do I want this behavior and this addiction and this emotional and behavioral cycle to be part of my reality? And the answer is no, I don't. Why do I keep trying to please people that don't give a fuck about me? Or even if they do, why do I try and keep everyone happy? It's a redundant idea. You can't.
Yep.
And as naff and cliche as this might sound, I say to people, I think this is the simplest and most effective. I don't say easiest, I say simplest and most effective, hard to execute, simple in concept, idea for living, is get really clear about what your values are. So, and all that means is, what are the things that actually matter most to you as a human?
Yep.
As a dad, as a business owner, as a lover, as a partner, as a spiritual being, whatever it is, right? Really matter to you. And then build habits and behaviours and process around those things. And then if people approve or don't, they do or they don't. But the best use of your energy is not trying to meet other people's criteria, because when we spend our life doing that, all of a sudden they start writing our story and we become a character in theirs, because now we're playing a role in their story and our role is, shit, I've got to meet their expectations and keep them happy.
Yep, and that's very hard to do. Like, you just reminded me of a session I had last week with a client who has a very, very big team, and the thing that he's really grappled with at the moment is they all need to be happy. We're talking about hundreds of people, and I said that's fucking impossible, because one of them will be having a shit day, and they won't be happy, and it's got nothing to do with you. And if you start to take that on as your chore to remedy that, well, then you're using energy that you shouldn't be using. And the second thing, a little tip that I say to people is, I loved it how you said working on the business and in the business, but even if you think of that for self, I say to people, why don't you imagine in a moment with whatever you're doing that you are actually up in a closed circuit TV camera. You're like a CCTV and you're watching yourself. What are you seeing? Rather than being in your body, then come out of your body and look back down and go, what would you describe the feeling and the observations of what you saw? And they're like, oh, that was really good, or that wasn't very good. And I think it's not about having an out-of-body experience. It's about just being more aware that stuff's going on. So, mate, you have given us so much today to think about. Thank you. Episode 3 done, and looking forward to catching up next week, mate. What are you doing in lockdown, by the way? What's going on for you?
I'm doing a bit of study this afternoon. I won't bore you with the details. I'm going to go I try and run 2 times a week. I'm going to run to the beach later, and
nice.
Hopefully it rains. One of my weird little loves is running in the rain. And then I think I might do fuck all, mate. I might do fuck all. I might lie in the bed and watch something stupid and laugh. And another thing very few people know is that I started playing guitar at 6 and I haven't stopped. So I have a few guitars, but I just don't pick my guitars up enough. So I might pick up a guitar and fuck around a bit with that.
I picked up a guitar at 40 because my best mate Gregor, who lives up in Mildura, still said, get a guitar. And mate, can you do bar chords? Are you a bar chord man?
Yeah, mate, I can do bar chords.
Oh, Jesus. 14 years later, I'm still struggling to try and pull bar chords out. But same for me. I might pick my guitar up today. But, mate, never going to go running in the rain. There's one thing we don't have in common. I hate running. I absolutely hate running, and I think it's because I have no ACL in my right knee. Might have a bit to do with that. Harps, thanks, mate, for coming on again, and we'll catch up next week.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, everyone.